Welcome to Comics Culture. I'm your host, Aaron Varnam. Today we have a very special show. Everything's coming up Millhouse today. We have got Chris Sims, Chad Bowers, two independent comic publishers, and folks, sit back. It's going to be interesting. We've had Chris on the show before. Last time, if you watched it, which we air a lot on the UNCP Educational Network. Chris, you were a big hit. Everybody loved you. That's why you're back. Today, we're going to talk a little bit less about professional wrestling, more about your comic book, which we were supposed to get to last time. I'm sorry, Chris, but you brought back up to keep us on track today.
Yeah, I brought Chad Bowers, who's my co-writer. We work together on Awesome Hospital, which is a webcomic we do, Downset Fight, which is our upcoming Oni Press graphic novel. We also have a couple of upcoming Monkey Brain books that we're doing through Monkey Brain Publishing digitally. But unfortunately, I'm going to WrestleMania, so that's what we're going to talk about for the next half hour.
I'm sorry. If Dan Jurgens is watching, we cannot talk about WrestleMania right now. So that's the only problem. We got to complain about that last time. But anyway, Chad, are you a big wrestling fan like Chris?
I mean, I watch it. I'm not. I don't think I could be described as big as Chris now.
It's okay. So let's talk about the process. For Oni Press, they have released such things as Scott Pilgrim, which is a multi-million selling, amazing comic book series. How did you guys get in there? That's kind of a tough sell, isn't it?
It was actually really easy for us. We're both comics critics as well. I write for Comics Alliance. And Chad writes for
Multiversity Comics.
Multiversity.
Yeah.
And Oni, they liked comedy articles that I was writing. A lot of the editors there really enjoyed what we were doing. And when we started doing comics, they liked those too. Like the editors there would enjoy those. And so they told us, basically came to us and said, hey, why don't you pitch us a graphic novel? And we did.
Yeah, we did a 8-page backup story in one of their ongoing series first. A book called Resurrection that was written by Mark Guggenheim, and I can't remember the artist's name on that book. I think he's doing The Damned now, but anyway, they asked us to do a backup story for that, and we pitched a backup story that was kind of far out from what they were normally getting as far as backup pitches and stuff. And from there, they liked that story, and that story got a pretty good reception, and then they asked us to pitch the graphic novel. And they told us to pitch 3 ideas, and we pitched 1 idea, and they were like, that's enough. We'll take that one.
What's the pitch like? Is it high octane like you see in like Mad Men or some of the things like that?
We go into a room, we loosen our ties.
Yeah.
We go into a little room. I mean, we do this a lot.
So this is coming up next.
That's right.
And then there's a guy who comes out from outer space.
That's pretty much it.
In a farm.
He's a bowling pin. No, pitching is actually really hard because you have to condense down what you're doing to a page because that's all they want to read. That's all they have time to get through is a single page that basically lays out, your premise, your major characters, where you're taking the book over however many issues you want to do. Like we wrote a pitch for an ongoing series, and it was a nightmare.
Yeah, it was kind of
trying to figure because you have to plan out 12 issues, 24 issues, have a direction for the series, and that can change down the line. But they want to see where you're going. I have a really hard time sort of condensing everything. I like it much better when I find it much easier when we're self-publishing because we just kind of just go and do it at our own pace, and we have lunch and come up with plot twists.
Yeah, we don't really have to pitch to ourselves.
With the plotting with that as opposed to with your independent stuff that you're self-publishing, is it that much different though? I mean, having to plot it out months in advance.
Well, yeah,
to it.
like with the graphic novel, we had to obviously pitch the whole idea, and when you're trying to we didn't really know how long it was going to be. We were like, well, this could be 48 pages. This could be 248 pages. We tried to figure out kind of what the big parts of the book were going to be, and include that in the pitch. And then once the pitch gets approved, then they're like, okay, go ahead and break this down into chapters. And so you break it down into chapters, and then you break it down into pages, and then you break it down into panels, and so on and so forth. And by the end of it, hopefully, you have a book.
Whereas when we're doing Awesome Hospital, we'll write a page, send it to the artist, and then we're done for the week.
And then we're like, yeah, what do we do next week?
Well, yeah, we'll come up with that next Tuesday.
We'll have a loose plot that we've talked about, but nothing's concrete. We can change it at any time.
Yeah, when we go on trips, like when we drive to conventions, or when we came up here today, like our general way of passing time in the car for those 4-hour car rides is either arguing about the death of Superman, which is what we've done for the past 2 hours, or we'll plot out our next project.
Yeah.
We've written. That's basically how we came up with our with Subatomic Party Girls, which is the book we're doing for Monkey Brain.
Right.
So when you're doing it like that, do you have more appreciation for writers like Grant Morrison who plotted, like the Batman you can tell that has been plotted out for years almost? I mean, like this long form.
I do, yeah. I was recently listening to an interview with Grant Morrison, and it's funny, he was talking about his process and like how he has he goes from, thumbnailing the book himself to putting it into script form to working it back into a thumbnailed script and then sending it to the artist. And I was like, man, that seems like an awful lot of work to write a comic. But at the same time, I think that's the difference between being Grant Morrison and being, Chad Bowers or Chris Sims. It's just a different sort of process. But with that in mind, I guess, Chris and I sort of lean on each other a good bit. Like if I feel like a part of the book's kind of not going in my direction, I can pass it off to him and he can kind of fix it and vice versa, I think.
We had, I really respect artists or writers who do that, who have that plan, because that really shows. Like I'm a huge fan of Grant Morrison, and I think the way he has things meticulously planned out in advance and the way that they pay off is really good. Paul Grist is another guy who does that really well. But for us, like the style that we use is a little looser. We generally have a good idea of where we want to go, and we have a good idea of moments we want to get to. But again, those change depending on whether or not we feel like they're working. And like Chad said, we lean on each other a lot. And our editor at Oni once told us that we had the tightest script he'd ever seen.
Wow.
And he's worked with really top guys in comics. And he might have just been telling us that.
He tells that to everybody.
Yeah, exactly. But I think a lot of that maybe comes into the play because by the time our work kind of gets to an editor, like with the Oni stuff, we've kind of edited each other. Obviously, we fought a lot.
Word.
Yeah, exactly. So it's already been through sort of one editor by the time it gets there. Us being those editors, and so I think that's a little bit different. They probably don't have. Co-writers are kind of a weird animal in comics anyway. You've got a couple of big guys that do it, like Abnett and Lanning are pretty big. Yeah. I'm sure if we thought long enough, we could get other guys. Those guys. So it's not unusual. It's not unheard of.
Fred Valenti and Greg Pak.
Greg Pak. Yeah.
And everybody does it in a different style too. Chad and I. The way we'll actually write a comic, we'll come up with the plot, and we'll have a discussion. We'll call each other. We'll get on Skype. We'll go out to lunch.
A lot of lunch.
There's a lot of lunching involved. You can probably tell. Those are not the camera's 10 pounds being added. Those are I earned those. Those are legit. But
that's why your script is so tight.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. We have so much lunch. But then, the process comes where it's time to actually sit down and write the script. And obviously that is the most time-consuming part. But part of it is Chad will write a page and then he'll send it to me. He'll write a page one afternoon while I'm asleep because I work at night. And then I'll get up in the afternoon and then do my work. And then at 4 o'clock in the morning, I'll take a look at that script page. And I'll tell Chad what I thought of it, or I'll make some changes, or I'll just go on and write the next couple pages, and we switch back and forth. And eventually it gets to the point where, we finally read all of Downset Fight, a month ago?
Yeah, about a month and a half ago, something like that.
And we wrote that script 2 years ago.
Wow.
It's a 144-page graphic novel, so it took a while to be drawn. And we basically hadn't. I had consciously stayed away from looking at the script.
Yeah, me too.
I just wanted to see what I could follow from the art and what I remembered. And it looks beautiful. Scott Kowalczyk is the artist on that, and he is incredible. He did a book called Intrepids for Image, and he's doing a book for Oni with Chris Robertson, whose title I can't remember.
It's called The Strangers. It's their free comic book day book this year.
But then we sat down and read all 144 pages of Downset Fight with dialogue and everything on it. And it's at the point where we can't really remember who did what. There are certain moments where I remember, okay, I wrote that line, or Chad wrote that scene.
Or we fought about this line.
We fought about that for a week
won.
And didn't speak to each other. But, it's at the point where once you get that far removed from it, it really is a thing where it all comes together. And I think it reads really, really seamlessly because we have really similar views with very different approaches to how we write them.
Yeah, I think that's true. Reading it removed from the script, so far removed from the script, it's almost like we didn't even write it almost. Is that kind of how you felt when you were going through
Yeah,
it?
I
would
thought
hit
stuff was funny.
Yeah, exactly. I would hit stuff and I'd be like, oh, wow, that's really good. Who wrote that? Oh, wait a minute, that was us. No. But I mean,
that was Chris at 4 a.m.
That's
or
right.
was that Chad at 12
12 in the
p.m.?
afternoon, right. But I mean, yeah, it's an interesting experience to sit down and read something like that you've written, but it's kind of fresh and new.
It's almost like a movie when you're
Sure.
when the people who write the scripts for the movie, and then finally seeing it pan out, and you either get Citizen Kane or you get Godzilla starring John Cusack.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah.
I'll watch Godzilla starring John Cusack.
Yeah. Who's actually in Godzilla? It's
Matthew
Matthew Broderick.
Broderick.
That's
Matthew
right.
Broderick. But they look the same.
They are
Whatever.
same guy.
Same
I mean,
thing.
yeah, their mothers can't tell them apart.
If there was high fidelity, but the Jack Black part was played by Godzilla,
That'd be pretty
how
great.
great would that be?
I'd watch it.
I saw Tenacious D a couple weekends ago in concert. It was really
wow.
good, by the way.
Yeah.
So when we come back, we're going to take a break here in a few seconds, and we can kind of talk about the process and tell me a little bit about the plot of Downset Fight. I really, it seems like an interesting thing. We'll take a look at some of the pages of it.
Well, Jim Kirk is really interested.
Jim Kirk loves Downset Fight. George Takei would have been here, but
In the 24th century, it's required reading at Starfleet Academy.
oh my.
Oh man.
Well, we'll
Star
be
Trek
right
jokes.
back. We're going to see some great commercials.
Let's take it to the commercials.
Hey UNCP, guess what time it is?
That's right. It's time to register for classes for the upcoming semester.
That sounds complicated.
Nah, it's super easy.
First, log on to BraveWeb and check your time ticket.
Time ticket.
That's the day and time you can begin registering for classes. Upperclassmen go first, followed by juniorclassmen.
Next, make an appointment with your advisor to go over your transcript and schedule, and then you receive your pin.
You mean I need a pin to register for classes?
That's right. Without a pin, you can't get in.
After you meet with your advisor, log into BraveWeb on the day and time of your time ticket and register for your classes.
Some classes may be filled up, so always have a backup plan.
Wowzers, that is super easy.
Don't miss out. Check BraveWeb and meet with your advisor today!
To my sister, who always supported me. To my nieces and nephews, who always greeted me with a hug. To my best friend, who always made me laugh. To anyone who always thought I would do so much with my life. I'm sorry that I never let you see how broken I was.
The Constitution of the United States defines our great nation.
Our founding fathers created the Bill of Rights to amend the original Constitution and to ensure that it would always be a living document for the American people.
The First Amendment may be the best known and the most powerful amendment in the Bill of Rights.
Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof,
or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press,
or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances.
The Bill of Rights is reflected in the thoughts and acts of Americans and remains symbols of power that can move the world. The power is our faith in human liberty.
Join us next time to learn about the Second Amendment.
Welcome back to Comics Culture. I am Aaron Varnam, along with Chris Sims, Chad Bowers. We're talking about Downset Fight. Tell me a little bit about the plotting of this story. What is it about? Sell it to the wonderful viewers here in Pembroke.
You know, we've described it several times, and each time we talk about it, like, it sounds different, like a different comic, because each one of us focuses on, like, a different part of it.
I think the official summary that we got from Oni when they announced it in New York last October was that it's a book about how you can't run from your past, but you can punch it in the face.
That sounds fantastic.
That's the tagline.
Yeah.
It's about a football player whose name's Chuck Fairlane. He's the.
Don't give it all away. I'm just kidding.
I once described it at a convention, and it took me a half hour to describe it, and someone was like, "That sounds like a really good book," and I was like, "No, that's the first 10 pages." It's about a football player named Chuck Fairlane, who's a very promising rookie running back. In the last playoff game before the championships, he is provoked into a fight by the opposing team's mascot. And we see that he's got a lot going on. His dad's a very kind of sinister figure who's involved in gambling.
Yeah, there's all these like rumors in the football league that there's all this stuff going on behind the scenes.
That he's been throwing games.
And so there's this controversy around him already going into it. He's kind of like a hot topic player, I guess.
But he's this big, unstoppable running back, and we see him kind of, on, I guess, pages 2 and 3. Like, we see him, like, all the hits he's taking.
Amazing things, And,
like, plowing through dudes.
He doesn't punch anybody on the field, but that we should.
Punch anybody.
If we could go back and write that, like, we would do that.
But he,
it's like the last Boy Scout.
He's provoked into a fight by the opposing team's mascot, and he ends up getting a fight with the mascot and beating him up. The opposing team tries to pull him off the mascot. He beats them up. His own team tries to pull him off the opposing team. He beats them up.
So he's basically like the Incredible Hulk taking over New York City.
Yeah, like he's got some rage issues.
Right.
I think, like,
He basically flips out and beats up 2 football teams and a mascot.
And so, like, this thing, there's this story that sort of builds up around this called the brawl that cleared the benches or whatever. And so it kind of goes from there, and he sort of gets kicked out of the league, and we follow up with him 10 years later. And, like, life's pretty good for him now. He was a guy that sort of, like, begrudgingly went into football as a career, but he sort of likes his life post-football, which
he becomes a football coach.
Yeah, a high school football coach.
This is like Kenny Powers, Eastbound and Down.
Yeah, there are some similarities.
If Kenny Powers was happy.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's true. Okay.
Yeah.
But he becomes a football coach at Darius Rucker High School.
Yep.
Which
in Columbia, South Carolina, which is where we're sort of from.
Home of the Blowfish. Which that joke killed in New York.
Oh my gosh,
I did not
people think
expect
it's
it to
hilarious.
go over.
Yeah.
I thought that would be a Columbia-only joke, but it killed.
It's nationwide. Taking the nation by storm.
Hootie is on fire.
Hootie's all over the place.
Yeah.
Grammy winner, Darius Rucker.
That's right.
We come from a place with a statue.
Spokesman Darius Rucker.
Yeah, and don't they also have like Hootie Boulevard or something there?
I don't know.
I don't know
about Hootie Boulevard.
I don't know. I mean, like, neither one of us are really, like, passionate about Hootie and the Blowfish or Darius Rucker's country music career, but I think that, it's a pretty good joke, and it seems like something that could happen in Columbia, I think.
We do have a minor league baseball team that's called
the Blowfish, yeah.
The Columbia Blowfish. So that was kind of the inspiration for that gag.
Yeah.
But he's a football coach, and then, and the way Scott draws it is great, because he's still this, like, 7-foot-tall, super built guy, but he's old. Like, he's 10 years older, and he hasn't been a pro football player, so he's stocky.
Yeah,
like, he's very thick, and so you see him holding a coffee cup with, like, he can fit one finger into the ring on his coffee cup. It looks great. But one day, a football mascot, a guy in an elephant costume, shows up at his school and challenges him to a fight. And Chuck ends up fighting mascots and trying to figure out why these mascots are coming out of the woodwork and attacking him and brawling across the country. And
that sounds amazing.
It's really fun. There's a big conspiracy. It's also got a weird, kind of very, for us, very resonant, emotional story underneath all that.
There was Scott described that he was interviewed by MTV and described it as an Elmore Leonard novel meets, what did he say? The Waterboy, the Adam Sandler movie, The Waterboy, which we're like, wow, we would never describe it that way.
Yeah, our editor said it was like Happy Gilmore with football instead of golf.
Yeah, there you go.
And I thought that was really funny.
That's not bad, yeah.
Which, that's still in the range of Adam Sandler movies where I won't be insulted.
Right, exactly. It's like,
our work to it.
We sort of like to think of it. Yeah, that's true. We sort of like to think of it as like the Jim Brown movie that never got made in the 70s. I think that's kind of how we like to think of it, sort of, because it's got like it's kind of a crime story. One of the chapters is very, very heavy, like where he kind of, our main character kind of like is taken off the board for a little bit, and it gets very crime. It's like it's 6 chapters, and each chapter feels very different and very unique, and I think that it has like it's got a really good like narrative flow to it. I think.
And at the same time, the FBI is hunting down Chuck as he travels across the country.
Yeah, they suspect him of this crime thing.
Okay. So there's basically like, imagine if you turned on CNN and every day there was a story about how this disgraced football hero was going across the country with dudes in elephant costumes and bear costumes and chicken costumes and tiger costumes, attacking him.
And just like tearing up a Bojangles or whatever,
exactly. Tearing up Bojangles. There's a scene where Molly, who's the FBI agent who's trying to track him down, we have a page where she's interviewing witnesses, and in the background they're like pulling Cocky the Gamecock out of a pool at a hotel.
But not Cocky the Gamecock.
But not Cocky the
Yeah,
Gamecock.
exactly.
Right, or a Chanticleer because that's the CCU one as well.
Oh, really? There you go. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a very, very weird action movie kind of thing. But I mean, obviously we tried to make it funny. We tried to make it emotional.
Yeah, I mean, it's got a lot of action in it, but at the same time, I think it's like a good story. I mean, obviously, we hope it's a good story. That's got like you said, it resonates a lot, sort of like our personal lives a little bit. I think like where we kind of come from South Carolina, and you know the football culture that kind of exists in Columbia, and I guess nationwide. But
yeah, I don't know if it's like this everywhere, but Columbia, South Carolina will shut down on a
Oh
Saturday
yeah,
afternoon.
yeah.
If you try to go anywhere within 10 miles of Williams.
Yeah, and that's not a dig against football. I mean, I don't think either one of us would have written a football comic if we didn't have some like love of the game on some level.
Right.
But
I
like
don't.
where you don't. But I mean, I know. But the idea of in the same way that you guys are passionate about wrestling, and I think it's good to be passionate about stuff. I think that's fine.
If you like pro wrestling, you will probably like.
Yeah, no, this comic is as much pro wrestling.
I've been thinking about it. I'm like trying to visualize this in my head. I'm a huge wrestling fan and I'm a huge football fan. So together, these combine to make the greatest comic book ever made.
Oh man!
I mean, I will tell you, there are multiple suplexes in this.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on. And
now, would it be a vertical or is it a German?
There's one vertical.
Yeah.
There's one German.
Yep.
And I think we have a backdrop driver in there
we
too.
do, and that's
point.
the best. That might be the best scene. Yeah, it's really good. And Scott Kowalczyk, like I can't say enough about Scott. He's phenomenal. Like if you guys. Did you read The Intrepids or anything? Have you ever heard of that? Yeah, it's an amazing book. He's got kind of it's a weird mix between sort of a Paul Grist meets Steve Ditko meets like Mike Allred maybe. Like I can't quite figure, like the colors just really pop. It's a beautiful book.
He reminds me a lot of Paul Grist, who does a book called Jack Staff, which is my favorite superhero comic of all time. It's a great British superhero comic that was published by Image for a while. He's doing a book called Mudman now. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's
got kind of a pop art feel to it, I guess.
The first time we saw Scott's art, like we went on his website and he had a Jack Staff piece up.
Right.
And we were like, oh well, there's our guy.
Yeah.
He's great. And Josh Kroc is our letterer, who has lettered
Awesome Hospital, Monster Plus, which is a book that I do.
He does my Dracula comic.
He'll be lettering all of our Monkey Brain stuff too.
So are you able to actually pick your artists who you want to, or do they kind of pair it up as?
Oni sent us like a list of artists. They're like, hey, we have these guys who we'd like to work with that we want to put on a project. Do you guys like any of these? And really, Scott was kind of the first guy they sent us, and we were like, yeah,
they pushed Scott at us, but not in a like mean way, like not in a here's who's doing your book. It's like, hey, we really like Scott, and we really think he'd do well in your book, and we were like, yes, he looks great.
It was easy. It was an easy choice because like right off the bat.
Did they send you like a few pictures of what he does, or what?
They actually sent us the first issue of Intrepids.
They sent us a PDF of Intrepids, and we
which
read
also
through that.
has a bear in it.
Yep.
It also has someone fighting a bear, so we knew that was
Which
good.
is what everybody seems to remember from that book, the cyborg bear that's in that book. But our guy's not a cyborg bear.
He's even better.
Yeah,
he's a guy in a bear costume.
Who's really into indigenous people.
But with our other books, like with Subatomic Party Girls, which is our next project that's coming out from Monkey Brain, that was just a matter of we really wanted to do something with Erica Henderson. We had thought about different things that we wanted to do, and then she mentioned that she wanted to draw something that was in line with what we had planned for this book. And that all came together very quickly. That was the fastest we've turned around a comic.
Yeah, it really is.
From plotting to getting pages to it being drawn.
Like ready to go in like just a couple of weeks, really.
Yeah,
what's the length of time usually, though?
Well, I mean, it varies. First, it all depends on how fast we work, I think.
Yeah.
And sometimes we take a while to get scripts together.
Yeah, because we both have jobs.
Yeah,
and then the last thing, honestly, the last thing we want to do at the end of the day, like especially writing for Multiversity and writing for Comics Alliance, like the last thing I want to do when I'm done writing for the day is
write
do more
comic
writing.
books,
Yeah.
Right.
But it depends. Like obviously, like we said, Downset Fight we wrote 2 years ago. And it's a very long book. It's 144 pages.
Yeah, that's huge.
And we wrote that relatively quickly, though. Like that actually kind of popped pretty fast.
It came together, but it was a couple months.
Yeah. But I mean, for that kind of a book, for it to be our first book, I was kind of impressed at how fast it came together.
That's like the same length as that new Archie double digest, whatever that you were talking
double
about.
Digest. But with Subatomic Party Girls, it was literally we had a conversation. 2 weeks later, we had a script. A month later, we had a full 16-page comic that's going to be available for digital download.
So for people looking to get into comic books, what kind of advice are you guys willing to give out?
Get into
like on the
making them?
creative side, you mean?
Yes.
Just do it. I mean, like figure out a way that works for you and do it. Like sit down. I mean, practice, I guess is the only thing that I can think of.
The hardest thing about doing comics is doing it.
Yeah, just getting in there and starting.
The second hardest thing is doing it well.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. You're probably not, I mean, you may be, lucky and come right out of the gate and do something good, but I mean, like, who is it that said you had to write 1,000 bad pages before you get to that one good one? Was it, I forget who that was.
Well, that applies to anything.
Anything, right, exactly.
But like broadcasting and putting together my wrestling show, I was terrible for the first.
Right, exactly.
And I'm still terrible, but I'm getting better. I'm getting better. There's always getting.
The more you do it, the better you'll get and the faster you'll get.
Yeah, exactly.
You just have to be willing to put in that dedication and put in that time, which again is the hardest thing, especially if you're going to school or if you've got a job. Nobody can start out.
Well, showing up's the first part.
Doing
like,
comics.
Like comics. You got to like sit down
Being
and try
present.
to make a comic, and you might make a good one, you might make a terrible one.
Like the best thing you can do in comics is hit deadlines and be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, you can be consistently good, which we try to do.
Yeah, and put yourself out there. I think too. Yeah.
Put yourself out there. It's really easy to get stuff out with the web now. Like, and you can see a lot of great webcomics.
Oh yeah.
Like if you go back to the beginning. Like when they were doing them years ago, it's so much better now just because they've kept to that schedule. Like if you go and read Dr. McNinja, or if you go and read Penny Arcade or something, you'll see like art evolve over time and become worlds better just through the act of doing it.
Now with the promotional side, are you guys going to be going to a lot of comic book conventions this year? Are you going to XCon in Myrtle Beach or
we were talking about that coming up here.
We haven't been invited yet.
Yeah.
I know we're doing Fluke in Athens, which is a great independent
one-day
show.
I'm sure at XCon you guys can just like show up and like
put
your stuff down.
What's the claim to be Jonathan England?
We probably will.
Hey,
yeah.
we brought Jonathan in. He's
where's
in the restroom
Wheels?
right now.
We'll be doing HeroesCon in Charlotte, which is a great. If anybody out there likes comics and you haven't been to HeroesCon is an amazing show.
When is that?
It's June 7th through
the
10th?
9th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. It's that weekend.
No, it's Thursday the 7th. It's the 8th through the 10th.
8th through the 10th. There you go.
8th through the 10th.
Yeah, that's right, pre-show.
But that's a great show that's not too far away. And then I'll be going to New York and to San Diego to cover it for my job, but not for any promotional purposes.
Well, there you go, folks. We have got a fantastic 30 minutes. We could have gone on for 2 hours, I think, with you guys. Thank you for watching Comic Book Culture. Chris Sims, Chad Bowers, I'm Aaron Varnam. Have a great day.